A ruthless mafia boss thought he'd lost everything until he saw her face on the news. The woman he abandoned, and a baby he didn't know existed. One car crash, one secret, one enemy from his past who will stop at nothing. What would you do if the life you destroyed was the only thing worth saving? The city stretched endlessly beneath the glass of Leon Tavares's penthouse, a glittering jungle of sin and survival. The night was quiet, unnaturally so, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The only sound came from the faint hum of the television, its glow flickering against marble walls and half-empty whiskey glasses. Leon sat alone on a leather couch that cost more than most men's lives, his expression carved in stone. Power had given him everything: control, respect, fear, but it had stolen something he could never get back. The man who once ruled the underworld now stared at the silent screen, haunted by the ghosts of choices made in the name of protection. His empire was still standing, but his heart had long collapsed in the ruins of love he'd left behind. He didn't usually watch the news. It was full of the same chaos he had once orchestrated from the shadows: shootings, betrayals, power plays. But tonight, something in him had refused to sleep. Maybe it was the storm tapping at the glass, or the way the city lights looked colder than usual. He poured himself another drink, the amber liquid catching the screen's light like liquid gold. He lifted the glass halfway to his lips when the channel suddenly cut. A breaking news alert flashing in red. The reporter's voice trembled as she spoke about a car accident on the Brooklyn Bridge. Leon barely looked up at first. Tragedy was routine to him. But then he saw it. A car overturned, smoke rising against the midnight rain, paramedics rushing into the wreckage. Something about it froze him mid-breath. The camera zoomed in on a shattered window, and through the shards, he caught sight of a face he thought he'd never see again. His heart stuttered. Jenny. The name echoed in his mind like a forgotten prayer. Her hair was matted with blood, her body limp as rescuers dragged her from the wreck. For a split second, Leon's composure, that cold, unshakable armor, shattered. He leaned closer, the glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. It couldn't be her. Not after all this time. Not after he'd spent 3 years convincing himself she was safer without him. The image burned into his chest, searing through the years of distance and denial. His throat tightened, 1,000 memories flashing like lightning. Her laugh in the morning light, her voice trembling when she begged him to leave the Mafia world the night he walked away to protect her. That lie had kept him breathing, but now it tasted like poison. Then the camera shifted, and the world stopped again. Next to the wreck, a small figure was being lifted by a paramedic, a child barely moving, blood streaking the side of a tiny car seat. Leon's pulse hammered in his ears. A baby. Her baby. He rose slowly as if pulled by invisible hands. The tumbler slipped from his grasp, shattering across the marble. His chest felt tight, air refusing to come in. The reporter's voice faded under the pounding of his heartbeat. Mother and child rushed to Mercy Hospital. Condition critical. The words hit him like bullets. Without realizing, Leon grabbed his coat and keys, his mind drowning in the sound of Jenny's name. For years he had run from the ghosts of his past, but tonight the past had found him. As he rushed to the private elevator, the mirror caught his reflection. Sharp suit, cold eyes, jaw clenched like a man preparing for war. For the world, Leon Tavares was untouchable, a legend wrapped in violence. But beneath the $1,000 suit was a man shaking like a storm. The elevator doors closed, sealing him in silence. The city lights blurred as he descended, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt helpless. Rain lashed the streets as he sped through the night, tires screeching against wet asphalt. Every red light was a dare, every second an eternity. He could still see her face, pale and broken under the flickering bridge lights. Memories stabbed through him like knives. The night she'd cried in his arms, saying, "One day, Leon, your empire will burn everything you love." He had laughed then, arrogant, unshakable. But now, with every passing block, her words became prophecy. He was living the ashes she warned him about. The car's engine roared, a beast echoing his heartbeat. He gripped the steering wheel hard enough for his knuckles to whiten, whispering to himself like a man begging redemption, "Hold on, Jenny. Don't leave me again." The rain thickened, blurring his vision, but nothing could drown the ache clawing at his chest. He'd spent years mastering death, controlling it, using it. But this kind of fear, this kind of desperation, was something no weapon could fight. As he neared the bridge, the flashing lights of ambulances painted the road in chaotic red and blue. Police barricades surrounded the wreckage, smoke curling up into the storm. Leon stepped out into the downpour, ignoring the shouts of officers trying to hold him back. He wasn't their boss here. He was just a man chasing the one thing that ever mattered. The twisted car was unrecognizable. Metal mangled, windows shattered, the smell of gasoline heavy in the air. His shoes splashed through puddles of blood and oil as he pushed past paramedics, his voice breaking when he demanded, "Where is she?" One of the medics pointed toward the ambulance. Inside, Jenny lay unconscious, her face pale, her wrist limp. The sight nearly dropped him to his knees. He wanted to speak, to touch her, but his throat refused to work. His hands trembled as he reached for her. But before he could, the doors slammed shut, and the ambulance roared off toward the hospital. For a heartbeat, Leon stood frozen in the rain, watching the sirens fade into the storm. A part of him, the ruthless king, wanted to command, to control, to fix. But another part, the buried human part, could only whisper her name through clenched teeth. He ran back to his car, water streaming down his face, though he wasn't sure if it was rain or tears. As the city blurred past him again, flashes of memory kept cutting through. The sound of her laughter, her scent after a storm, the way she once said, "You don't have to be your father's shadow." He'd believed he was saving her when he left, but now it felt like he had only sentenced her to pain. When he reached Mercy Hospital, the chaos was already in motion. Flashing lights, reporters shouting, doctors rushing in and out. Leon pushed through the crowd, ignoring security. He was used to breaking through barriers. He'd done it his whole life. But this time, every step felt heavier, every breath a reminder that he might already be too late. The receptionist tried to stop him, but one look in his eyes made her go silent. His voice was raw when he asked, "The woman from the bridge, Jenny, where is she?" She pointed toward the emergency ward, and Leon didn't wait for another word. The sterile scent of disinfectant hit him like a wall as he entered the ward. Nurses moved quickly around him, voices low but urgent. He caught glimpses of bodies on stretchers, blood-streaked faces, flashing monitors. But all he could see was Jenny. Through a glass window, he spotted her, still, fragile, but breathing. Relief and pain collided in his chest, stealing his breath. He pressed a hand against the glass as if distance alone could kill him. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw a nurse walking past with a small bundle. The child. Leon's gaze locked onto the tiny form swaddled in white. The nurse stopped briefly at the counter, adjusting a tag around the baby's wrist. The faint light caught the letters engraved there, and Leon's world tilted. His heartbeat slowed, then roared in his ears like thunder. He took a step closer, his breath trembling as his eyes focused on the name written in delicate ink. Lucas Tavares. The name stabbed through him, shattering every wall he had built. His knees almost gave out as he whispered the word again, barely audible. Tavares. His name. His blood. His son. The nurse turned to look at him, confusion flickering across her face, but Leon didn't move. The room seemed to fade. The lights, the noise. the people, until all that remained was the sound of his heart breaking open. 3 years of guilt, distance, and silence collapsed into one brutal truth. Jenny hadn't just moved on, she'd carried a secret that was part of him. For the first time in his life, Leon Tavares, the man the world called a monster, felt something close to fear. Not of death, not of enemies, but of what came next. His son was alive. His past was no longer buried. And somewhere deep inside the walls of that hospital, fate had just rewritten his destiny. As he stood frozen under the flickering hospital light, a nurse whispered into a phone behind the counter, "He's here. Leon Tavares just arrived." And on the other end, someone quietly replied, "Then the game begins." Leon's boots echoed through the sterile hospital corridor, the sound harsh against the polished floors. His coat, still wet from the rain, clung to his shoulders as he moved like a man possessed. Each step pounded against his chest, matching the rhythm of a heart that refused to settle. Nurses and doctors turned to look, their faces masks of apprehension and unease. Some whispered under their breath, some averted their eyes. For them, he was chaos incarnate. For him, he was desperation made flesh. Every second that passed without seeing her, without knowing if she was alive, felt like a dagger twisting in slow motion. He called out her name again, his voice rough, hoarse, echoing off the walls. "Jenny!" The sound tore through him, carrying both fear and fury. He skidded around a corner and nearly collided with a gurney, clutching it for balance. The world seemed to blur at the edges. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered as if reflecting the turmoil inside him. Then he saw her, lying beneath the web of machines, wires snaking around her like restraints of some cruel prison. Her chest rose and fell shallowly, a fragile rhythm that made him want to both cradle her and destroy every danger around her. And beside her, in a crib that seemed far too small for the weight of fate it carried, was the child. Leon froze. His eyes narrowed, pupils wide with shock and disbelief. The boy's dark hair was damp, sticking to his tiny forehead, and his delicate fingers twitched as if reaching for the very life that had so nearly been stolen. But it was the eyes that struck him with a violence no bullet ever could. Eyes that mirrored his own, piercing and alive. Recognizing something without knowing how, the tag on the baby's wrist glinted under the hospital light. Lucas Tavares. His own name, his son. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Memories, sharp and jagged, tore through him. The nights she had begged him to quit the empire, to walk away from blood and power. The arguments that had ended in silence, in him leaving to protect her. All the justifications he had told himself for walking away evaporated in an instant. He had believed he was sparing her pain, but now he understood the truth. He had only spared himself. The child in the crib was proof that she had carried a secret to protect him, and in hiding it she had shielded herself and his son from the wrath of his world. Leon's hands clenched into fists, the veins in his neck standing out as anger and guilt collided. His voice, almost strangled with emotion, shook when he whispered, "All these years, you never told me." He wanted to touch the baby, to hold him, but he also feared breaking the fragile line between life and death that held them both together. Nurses stepped back, uncertain whether to intervene or flee. Leon didn't care. He had ruled empires. He could navigate this chaos. But nothing in all his years of crime, power, or violence had prepared him for this moment. A soft beep from the monitors drew his attention. Jenny's vitals were fragile, dancing on the edge of catastrophe. He knelt beside the crib, his breath fogging against the glass as he whispered, "Lucas, I'm here." The boy's tiny fingers curled, reaching instinctively for him. Every instinct inside Leon roared. Protect, fight, love, atone. He realized in that moment that his empire, his power, His entire identity was meaningless compared to the lives of these two people lying before him. Footsteps approached. Firm, measured. A doctor appeared, eyes sharp beneath a crease of worry. "Mr. Devarez," he said cautiously, voice steady but urgent. "We need you calm. Both patients are critical, but stable. For now." Leon barely registered the words. His mind was a storm of guilt, fear, and resolve. "Stable?" he demanded, voice cracking, though not with weakness. "Tell me who did this, who tried to kill her. Was it random?" The doctor's expression darkened, and he glanced around, lowering his voice. "The accident wasn't random, Mr. Devarez. Her car was forced off the bridge." The words struck like ice water poured down his spine. His fists slammed against the edge of the crib, nails digging into the frame. Fire burned up his chest and settled in his gut. His lips moved, but only one thought emerged, sharp and deadly. Then it wasn't an accident. Leon's mind raced, spinning through every possibility. Enemies long thought dead, old scores, whispers in shadowed corners. Any of them could have orchestrated this. His fingers tightened around the edge of the crib, white-knuckled, as memories of betrayals, lies, and power, plays from his life in the underworld, surged forth. He remembered the names, the symbols, the threats he thought were erased or forgotten. Some were back, hiding in plain sight, waiting to strike at what he loved most. Suddenly a nurse returned, hesitant, holding a small tablet. "Mr. Devarez." Security footage from the bridge. Leon's eyes snapped to the screen. On it, a sleek black SUV barreled aggressively toward Jenny's car. The camera angle caught something he thought he'd erased from history. A symbol emblazoned on the side of the vehicle, a mark that had haunted his past. His stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed recognition. Every memory of past violence, of enemies crushed and buried, returned with ruthless clarity. He lunged toward the tablet, ignoring the nurse's cautions. The footage looped in slow motion. The other car ramming Jenny's vehicle, forcing it off the bridge, its driver unseen, faceless but purposeful. Leon's jaw tightened. The symbol burned into his mind, a signature of vengeance, of old wars he thought were finished, and now it was back, targeting her, targeting his son. His fists slammed again, rage and fear intertwined like wildfire. The hospital around him faded. Beeping machines, the whispers of nurses, the sterile scent of antiseptic, all disappeared into the background. There was only the image of the car, the symbol, the truth that Jenny had been a pawn, and his son's life had been at stake before he even realized it existed. His son. Lucas. The weight of that realization made him tremble, not with weakness but with determination. Nothing and no one would harm them again. Leon's mind replayed every decision that led here. Leaving Jenny, abandoning her, walking away to protect himself. Every lie, every omission, every moment of cowardice now screamed at him like a chorus of ghosts. The anger was volcanic, but beneath it lay an ache deeper than blood could heal. He would pay for every second he had lost, every moment he had failed to protect them. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. A nurse appeared again, glancing nervously at him. "Sir, the boy's father. We didn't—" Leon cut her off, voice low, lethal. "I am his father. Let me through." Her eyes widened, and she stepped aside. Every hallway, every door, every sterile wall became a path toward redemption, toward vengeance, toward reclaiming what was taken from him. He moved to the monitor where Jenny's vitals were displayed. The numbers flickered. He reached out, almost touching her hand through the sterile plastic covering her arm. Memories of her warmth, of nights spent whispering in the dark, of promises made and broken surged through him. He whispered her name, each syllable trembling. "Jenny, I'm here. I won't leave again." The baby shifted in his peripheral vision, tiny hands curling, instinctively aware of the presence of the man whose blood ran through him. A doctor returned with grim eyes, holding another tablet. We've reviewed the footage further. Whoever did this, they left no trace except this symbol. They're professional. Precise. Leon's lips tightened. Professional? Yes. Precise? Yes. But not prepared for the reckoning that would follow. Every muscle in his body tensed. He could feel the fire of his old life stirring, the old instincts returning, sharpening with every heartbeat. A soft voice behind him murmured, almost lost in the chaos. "Mr. Devarez, please calm yourself." He ignored it. Nothing could calm him now. Calm was the luxury of those who hadn't almost lost everything. His son had almost died. Jenny had almost died. The bridge, the night, the accident, orchestrated by someone who knew how to hurt him where it mattered most. His hand brushed against the baby's wrist again. "Lucas," he whispered, voice raw with emotion. "I'm here. I won't let them take you." Each word was a promise, each heartbeat a vow. And as he looked at Jenny, fragile and pale, connected to tubes and machines, he realized the storm he had walked into was bigger than he had imagined. This was no random attack. This was a message, and the message was personal. The hospital lights flickered as the rain outside drummed against the windows. Leon's eyes narrowed. He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He stared at the monitor, at the footage, at the symbol. Recognition struck him like a knife twisting in his chest. That mark, that symbol, it belonged to enemies he had thought were long erased, buried under years of blood and fire. They were back, and now they had chosen Jenny and Lucas as the message. A sudden alert on the monitor drew his gaze. The SUV was seen speeding away, disappearing into the darkness of the Brooklyn streets. The symbol glinted in the dim light, leaving a silent threat, a promise of chaos yet to come. Leon's knuckles whitened around the crib again. Rage and protection fused into something primal. His voice was barely audible, a growl, a vow. "You want me to bleed. You want me to watch them suffer. I will find you." From the shadows of the corridor, a nurse whispered urgently into a phone. "He's here. Mr. Devarez knows." And on the other end, a cold voice replied, "Good. Let's see how far he will go to save them." 3. The symbol burned in Leon's mind like a brand, unrelenting and precise. He replayed the footage over and over, each time seeing the SUV ram into Jenny's car with calculated malice. The insignia emblazoned on the vehicle was unmistakable. The mark of the Veroni cartel, a name he had buried years ago beneath fire and blood, convinced that it would never return to haunt him. But now it had, crawling out of the shadows, and it had chosen Jenny as the weapon to wound him where he could not recover. The realization struck like a hammer to his chest. This wasn't random. This wasn't chaos. This was personal, deliberate. A message written in pain and fear. He walked the length of the hospital corridor, boots clicking against the linoleum like the echo of a drumbeat summoning a storm. The sterile lights above reflected off the wet slick of his hair and coat, flickering like the warning lights of some unseen battlefield. His pulse throbbed in his temples. Anger flared first, hot and uncontrolled, then cooled into something sharper, deliberate, methodical. This wasn't about vengeance, not in the small sense. It was about power, and a power that had long since left the world of commerce and business. This was about love, about protection, about the stakes of his heart being dragged into the arena of bloodshed he thought he had left behind. Leon stopped in front of the glass wall of the pediatric ward, peering down at Lucas sleeping in the crib. The boy's chest rose and fell in perfect innocence, unaware of the storm that had descended upon their lives in the last few hours. Tiny fingers curled instinctively, reaching for nothing, for everything. Leon's jaw clenched, muscles taut under his skin. Whoever had done this would pay. Whoever had forced Jenny off that bridge would understand soon what it meant to touch what was his: the past, the present, and now the future incarnate in that fragile, breathing child. A sudden vibration drew him from his thoughts. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the screen lighting up with a message from an unknown number. He pulled it out, expecting some cryptic threat, some ghost of the past daring him to flinch. The message was simple, chilling, precise. You can't protect what you abandoned. Leon's blood ran cold. The words were calculated to wound, to pierce the armor he had spent decades forging around himself. He stared at the screen, gripping it so tightly his knuckles whitened. Every instinct honed by years of blood and betrayal screamed at him. Whoever this was had studied him, understood him, knew exactly where to strike. His eyes returned to the child. Lucas lay peacefully, innocent, fragile, untouched by the dark knowledge that was gnawing at his father's mind. The boy's serenity became a line of fire across Leon's chest. Whoever had engineered this night, whoever had dared to manipulate the lives of these two people he loved, was about to realize that the stakes were more than business deals, more than alliances, more than vendettas. This was war. A war he would fight with everything in him, and no one, not even ghosts of his past, would survive his wrath unscathed. A nurse approached, moving carefully, a folder in her hands. She hesitated when she saw him, concern etched into the lines of her face. "Mr. Devarez, I found something in Jenny's purse. Thought you should see it." He didn't speak, didn't breathe. His attention locked on the small, trembling envelope. The paper trembled in her hands, as if aware of the gravity it carried. She extended it toward him, and Leon's fingers closed around it, trembling, not with weakness, but with the weight of anticipation. The envelope was light, worn, stained with the faintest trace of what he assumed was her blood. The handwriting inside was shaky, familiar, unmistakably hers. His breath caught as he unfolded the paper. There was only one word, penned with urgency and precision, and a time beneath it: Jack tonight. Jack. His most trusted man, the lieutenant who had once stood beside him through wars, betrayals, and blood-soaked nights. Jack, whose loyalty had been tested and proven countless times. The man Leon had once called brother. Now suddenly, the word alone twisted the knife of uncertainty deeper into his chest. Why was Jack's name here? Why tonight? The mind trained to anticipate violence, to calculate threats, immediately went into overdrive. Every possible scenario played in his head, each one darker than the last. Leon's pulse accelerated, his fingers tightening around the envelope until the paper crumpled slightly under his grip. The world narrowed, focusing entirely on the implications of that single word. The room around him, the fluorescent lights, the muted beeping of monitors, the sterile scent of antiseptic, faded to nothing. Jack, tonight. And the questions cascaded like a waterfall of fire. Was he involved? Had he been manipulated? Or was this a warning? His eyes swept the ward once more, taking in Lucas, taking in Jenny. The boy's small chest rose and fell in rhythm, utterly unaware of the storm gathering around them. Jenny, fragile beneath the tubes and monitors, seemed suspended between life and death. And somewhere in that fragile space lay the next move, the next betrayal, the next revelation. Leon's mind raced faster than his heart, mapping possibilities, recalling every action, every conversation, every loyalty that had defined his life. He felt the darkness of the past press in, the long nights of planning, of alliances made and broken, of enemies buried under fire, the Veroni cartel, thought dead yet now alive, orchestrating carnage from the shadows. The attack on Jenny was too precise, too deliberate. Every detail pointed to expertise, history, personal knowledge. Whoever had orchestrated this was sending a message, not to his empire, not to his wealth, to him. Leon's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. He could feel the tension coiling inside him, a familiar heat rising that had fueled him through countless wars. This was personal. This was the first strike in a game he had thought he'd left behind, a game whose rules were written in blood and fear. The name Jack, scrawled in Jenny's dying ink, was a beacon in that storm, a signal that his world, his carefully constructed world of power and control, was about to collide with the truth he had long avoided. He slipped the envelope into his pocket and stepped back, pacing, boots echoing. The hospital corridor felt like a cage, sterile and cold, yet charged with tension, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and fear. His thoughts whirled. Jack, Veroni, Lucas, Jenny. Every connection spiraled into possibilities, every memory into potential threats. And beneath it all, a single chilling certainty. Someone had calculated every move, and he was now in their game. Leon stopped in front of the glass, staring down at his son. Lucas's tiny hands twitched, and for a fleeting second the world seemed to pause. A memory pierced him. Nights when he had held Jenny, nights when he had whispered promises he hadn't kept. Regret mixed with rage. He would not fail again. Whoever was behind this attack, whoever had forced Jenny off that bridge, whoever had touched his son, they would find no mercy. Another vibration from his phone drew his attention. This time, a video clip had arrived, sent from the same unknown number. Leon didn't flinch. He played it, heart thudding, palms tight around the edge of the crib. The video was short, grainy, a blacked-out figure speaking in a distorted voice. You thought hiding would protect them, but the past always finds you. The screen went black. No signature, no clue, just words that set fire to every instinct inside him. Leon's eyes narrowed into slits. The past, the enemies he had buried, the betrayals he had survived. All of it was not finished. He could feel the familiar thrill, the surge of calculated fury that had once allowed him to command empires, to dictate life and death. This time, though, it was more intimate, more urgent. This was not about power. It was about love. And no one threatened what was his without consequence. He glanced down at the envelope again. Jack. Tonight. The words burned in his mind. Could he trust Jack? Could he believe in the loyalty that had once been unshakable? Or was this another thread of deception, a manipulation woven to hurt him in the deepest way possible? Leon's hands flexed, muscles tense beneath the suit, as he felt the first surge of a plan form. A hunt that would uncover truth, expose betrayal, and protect what mattered most. As he pocketed the envelope and turned to leave, his phone buzzed again. This time, a single chilling message appeared. Look closer at who you call family. Betrayal wears the face you trust most. Leon's pulse spiked. He froze mid-step. Betrayal. Family. Jack. Every instinct screamed danger, and somewhere in the shadows of that hospital, the game had just begun. The rain had stopped, leaving the pier slick and glistening under the faint light of street lamps that pierced the fog like distant warnings. Leon's car tires hissed against the wet asphalt as he approached the location indicated in Jenny's hastily scrawled note. His chest burned with anticipation, every muscle in his body taut, every nerve screaming that this night would change everything. The envelope had been simple, a single word and a time, but the weight behind it was immeasurable. Jack. Tonight. Loyalty, betrayal, love, and blood all intertwined in that single word. The fog clung to the pier like a living thing, curling around crates, railings, and wooden planks. The smell of the sea mixed with the sharp tang of electricity in the air, making each breath taste heavy and metallic. Leon stepped out of his car, boots sinking slightly into the damp wood, eyes scanning every shadow, every outline. His gun was in his hand instinctively, the weight comforting and familiar. He had faced enemies before, men who sought his life with knives, bullets, and deceit. But this was different. This was a betrayal that cut deeper than any wound he had ever survived. A figure appeared in the distance, leaning casually against a sleek black car, as if waiting for a scene to unfold. Leon's eyes narrowed. The shape was unmistakable. Jack. Calm. Controlled. Almost unnervingly so. The man's hands rested casually, but the cold glint in his eyes betrayed everything he had trained Leon to trust. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Jack's voice broke the night, low and soft, carrying a hint of regret. A weight that mirrored years of unspoken truths. Leon's grip on his gun tightened. His mind raced, calculating, anticipating, but every instinct conflicted with his emotions. He had called Jack a brother once, a man who had swore loyalty in blood, who had been beside him through wars, betrayals, and countless nights of violence. Yet here he was, standing in the mist, a symbol of everything he feared might have been corrupted by time and circumstance. The weight of the betrayal was tangible, pressing against him, bending him under its invisible force. 3 years ago, Jack continued, the words deliberate, measured, slicing through the silence like sharpened knives. "When you left her, she came to me for help. I protected her, until protecting her meant crossing you." The words landed like bullets. Leon's breath caught. The waves lapped violently against the pier, as if echoing the chaos erupting inside him. His gun didn't lower, but neither did he fire. His mind was a storm of fury, disbelief, and the sharp pang of a broken trust. The wind tugged at the edges of Leon's coat, cold and relentless. He stepped closer to Jack, eyes burning with questions, with rage, with the ache of betrayal. The water below reflected flashes of light, as if mocking the darkness inside him. He wanted to demand answers, to tear the truth out of Jack with his bare hands if necessary. But he was no longer the same man who acted on impulse. Every movement, every decision, every flicker of emotion was tempered by years of strategy, of survival. Jack pushed himself away from the car and moved slightly, almost theatrically, tossing a file at Leon's feet. The leather-bound folder hit the wood with a soft thud, and Leon's gaze fell upon it immediately. He bent down, eyes scanning the contents. Photographs spilled out, images of Jenny, alive, bruised, wary, and standing beside her was a figure Leon thought had been erased from the world forever. A man whose name had been whispered in reverent fear during his early years in the underworld. The blood drained from Leon's face. "He's alive," Jack said quietly, grimly, "and he's coming for your son." The words reverberated in Leon's chest, each one hammering like a gavel in a court of judgment. The wind howled across the pier, tugging at the pages, echoing the storm inside him. His hand hovered over the photographs, fingers frozen, stomach twisting, heart hammering like a drum of war. The past he thought he had buried was not only alive, but it was orchestrating a return with meticulous cruelty. Leon's eyes fell on the man in the photos, the lines of his face sharp, older, colder. With the same eyes that had once looked at him as a teacher, a mentor, a shadow of guidance and manipulation all in one. Elias Romano, the one who had taught him everything about power, strategy, and betrayal, the one who had raised him, sharpened him, and ultimately set him on a path that made him untouchable. Leon's breath hitched, a mixture of disbelief and rage churning in his chest. Elias, alive. The very thought threatened to crush him under its weight. The photographs revealed a meticulous pattern. Safe houses, meetings, figures that Leon recognized from intelligence long thought dormant. Jenny was a pawn, not a choice. Lucas had been the leverage, the tool to draw Leon out. The depth of the deception was staggering. Leon's mind raced. Every ally, every memory, every battle fought and survived suddenly had new context, new meaning, a new sting of betrayal. The war had returned, personal, intimate, and merciless. Jack's expression remained unreadable, calm, almost too calm, his hands resting lightly in his pockets. Yet the subtle quiver of his jaw betrayed an inner struggle. "I didn't tell you sooner," Jack confessed, voice tight, edged with tension, "because I didn't know how you would react, because it was never just about loyalty. It was about survival. Hers, yours, the boys, and yes, mine too." Leon took a step back, storm clouds of fury and confusion churning in his chest. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, to demand answers, to make Jack pay for the years of secrecy. But the photographs on the pier were proof enough, proof that their lives, their decisions, had been manipulated by forces long thought destroyed. The air smelled of wet wood, salt, and betrayal, each scent piercing him like a needle. He glanced at Lucas again, mentally reconstructing every memory, every choice, every failure. The boy's existence was the keystone of this trap. Elias had been waiting, planning, orchestrating every move with surgical precision. Leon's chest tightened. He had survived countless wars, but this was intimate. This was a wound that cut not flesh, but the very essence of his life, his heart, his choices. Jack moved closer, and for the first time, Leon saw a flicker of fear, a glimpse of regret in the man who had once called himself his brother. "You have to understand," Jack said softly, "I did what I thought was right. For her, for the boy, for you. I couldn't let him see what was coming until you were ready to act." Leon's hand brushed over the edge of the photographs. The image of Elias's face stared back, cold and calculating, the same face that had once shaped him into the monster the world feared. A shiver ran down Leon's spine. Questions collided with memories. Memories collided with instinct. Instinct collided with fury. This was the moment that demanded clarity, demanded action, demanded truth. And then, in the fog-laden silence of the pier, a single sound broke through, the soft lapping of water against wood. A faint movement in the shadows caught Leon's eye. Someone was watching, someone waiting. His grip on his gun tightened. He didn't flinch, didn't move. He only observed, the predator in him awakening fully, senses alert, body ready to strike. Jack dropped another folder, thicker, heavier, marked with the unmistakable seal of Elias's cartel. "You need to see this," Jack said, voice low. "Everything you thought you knew. It's a lie. And he's already planning the next move." Leon bent down to open it, heart hammering. The first page revealed a name, a location, and a plan that would set the entire city on fire. Elias Romano was alive, and he had not forgotten. 5. Leon's hands trembled slightly as he sifted through the contents of the thick folder Jack had dropped at his feet. Each photograph, each document, each name scrawled in meticulous handwriting struck him with a combination of disbelief and rage. Elias Romano, alive. Not some ghost-haunting rumors in the underworld, but a living, breathing puppet master who had orchestrated a return that none of his enemies could have anticipated. The man he had thought cremated in the warehouse explosion years ago had survived. And now he was pulling strings in the shadows with a cunning that made Leon's blood run cold. The photographs showed Elias in his element, surrounded by armed men, seated behind polished mahogany desks, maps of the city laid before him like a chessboard. His empire had grown in secrecy, fueled not just by crime, but by information stolen from Leon's own inner circle. Every betrayal, every hidden surveillance, every misstep that Leon had made unknowingly had fed the new power that Elias now commanded. Leon's mind raced as he realized the magnitude of what had been done. Every choice he had made, every life he had tried to protect, had been manipulated with ruthless precision. And then there were the images of Jenny. Leon's chest tightened, stomach twisting into knots. She was alive, bruised and wary, but alive. Yet each photograph revealed her proximity to Elias, a pawn, a bargaining chip, a shield between him and Leon's fury. His heart pounded as he pieced together the horrifying implications. She had known of Elias's survival, had tried to warn him, but had been silenced, coerced, and cornered into secrecy for the sake of their son, Lucas. The realization hit like a hammer. Elias had used her, used Leon's love for her to orchestrate a trap that was now unfolding with merciless clarity. Jack's face was grim, sweat glistening on his forehead, eyes heavy with guilt and anguish. "He survived the fire," Jack said through gritted teeth, voice tight with emotion. "He built a new cartel. He's been gathering secrets from your own men, from every corner of the empire you once ruled. Jenny discovered it. She tried to warn you, but he got to her first." Leon's fingers flexed into fists so tight that his knuckles turned white, trembling with a mix of fury and helplessness. He bent closer, gripping Jack's collar, voice low and trembling with fury and heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let her face him alone?" Jack's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, the weight of his own guilt heavy on his shoulders. "Because I loved her too," he whispered. The confession hit Leon with the force of a gunshot. A lifetime of rage, betrayal, loyalty, and love collided in a single instant. Leon's grip on Jack loosened, the truth shattering him like glass underfoot. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant slap of waves against the pier. Every instinct honed through decades of survival screamed at him to act, to strike, to hunt, to tear down everything Elias had built. Yet beneath the fury was a raw, aching sorrow. Every year spent apart, every decision made to protect Jenny, every moment he had justified his absence had been orchestrated by Elias. Leon's heart ached not just from fear, but from the realization that love, trust, and loyalty had all been manipulated into a weapon against him. The folder fell from his hands, leather hitting the wet wood of the pier with a dull thud. Leon's boots pressed against it as he stepped back, chest heaving, gaze fixed on Jack. "He played us, all of us," Leon muttered, voice rough with the weight of the revelation. Every move, every silence, every choice, he shaped it for this moment. The fog wrapped around them, thick and suffocating, as if the night itself conspired to mirror the darkness settling in Leon's soul. Jack exhaled, the sound trembling. Yes, and he's still planning. He wants you out of the way. Jenny, Lucas, they're his leverage. He's counting on your anger, your love, your past mistakes to control you, to trap you. He knows you better than anyone. Leon's fingers dug into the railing, cold wood biting through his leather gloves. He had faced enemies who thrived on fear, rivals who manipulated men like pawns, betrayals that had turned brothers into corpses. But this was intimate, personal. It was war, and the battlefield was the people he loved most. His eyes darted back to the photographs of Jenny, her bruised face, her tense posture, the subtle signs of fear and exhaustion. It all screamed manipulation. And yet she had chosen to survive, to protect Lucas, to endure the terror for the sake of their son. Leon's chest tightened, his vision blurring as rage and pride clashed violently. "He won't get away with this," Leon growled, his voice low, almost a snarl. "He won't touch her. He won't touch Lucas, not while I'm alive." Jack placed a hand on his shoulder, a feeble attempt at grounding him. "We have to move carefully. One wrong step and he'll know. One wrong step, and it's too late." Leon's gaze hardened, eyes like steel. Then we move fast. We move precise. We burn everything he's built if we have to. The fog seemed to shiver in response, the distant clatter of water against the pier echoing like a distant drumbeat, heralding the storm to come. Suddenly, Leon's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number illuminated the screen. Your past is alive. Your love is the bait. Choose wisely. He stared at it, pulse spiking, heart hammering against his ribs. The warning was clear, and the implication deadly. Elias knew he was close. He knew Leon would act, and he had already prepared. The chessboard had been set long ago, and now every piece was moving toward the inevitable clash. Leon's gaze returned to the photographs again, lingering on the images of Jenny and Lucas. Every detail mattered. Every shadow, every reflection, every glance captured in those images was a clue, a hint, a thread leading back to Elias. The realization hit like a punch. She had been taken not randomly, not out of luck, but with surgical precision. Every move he had made over the last days, every decision born of love and rage, had been anticipated. The fog swirled around them as Leon's mind raced. Where had she been taken? Who was guarding her? How many men were involved? And above all, what did Elias want next? The thought that someone could manipulate the lives of those he loved so completely made his blood boil, yet also sharpened his focus. He would find them, he would bring them back, and he would make Elias pay for every second of fear, every wound inflicted, every tear shed in silence. Jack watched him, eyes heavy, knowing that words were useless against the fire ignited in Leon. He simply nodded, letting the man who had once ruled an empire with iron and blood prepare for the hunt that had now become personal. He underestimated your love, Jack muttered. But love is dangerous when it's wielded like yours. Leon's lips curved into a grim, predatory smile. Dangerous was exactly what he intended to be. Before they could move, Leon's phone buzzed again. A short video appeared. The camera shook slightly, showing Jenny's hospital bed. Empty. Tubes dangling, monitors silent. No sign of the nurses. No trace of anyone but the fading echo of footsteps. The caption read simply, "She's mine now. Come if you dare." Leon's fists clenched, teeth grinding. Rage, fear, and determination fused into one burning purpose. The hunt had begun. Leon's city, once his kingdom, had transformed into a living, breathing battlefield. The familiar streets of New York were no longer just pathways of commerce and influence. They were veins of danger, conduits for whispers, secrets, and the faint echo of footsteps he could almost hear but could not see. Every alley, every neon-lit corner, every shadowed doorway became a potential hideout for Elias, and each clue was a pulse in the web of deception he had to untangle before time ran out. His grip on the steering wheel was iron, knuckles pale against the leather, eyes scanning the streets with a predator's precision. The city trembled under his fury, not just figuratively. Cars skidded to the side as he roared past intersections, horn-blaring pedestrians scattering from the figure of a man possessed, a storm incarnate behind the wheel. Every instinct that had once made him untouchable in the underworld now surged with desperation. Control, the trait that had defined Leon Devarez, now felt like a distant memory. All that mattered was Jenny and Lucas, their safety, their survival, their lives balanced on the razor edge of his wrath and Elias's malice. Jack followed in the shadow of Leon's fury, guilt etched deeply into the lines of his face, eyes dark and haunted. Every move he made, every choice he had kept hidden, now bore the weight of consequence. "He's watching," Jack muttered, voice low, tension in every syllable. "Every step we take, he knows." Leon didn't respond, only gritted his teeth, muscles taut, eyes scanning, mind calculating. He could feel Elias's presence in every corner of the city, in every whisper of wind, in every flicker of shadow against brick and steel. They traced the trail to a derelict textile mill near the river, a crumbling monument of rusted beams and shattered windows, its walls echoing the sins of years long past. Leon's boots struck the wet concrete with authority, echoing through the cavernous interior as he moved through the darkness. The air reeked of mold, decay, and oil, but it also carried the unmistakable tension of anticipation. Every creak of the floor, every groan of the building skeleton set his senses on fire. This was no ordinary confrontation. This was a reckoning. Inside, shadows danced against the walls, cast by the faint glow of broken skylights and the occasional flicker of faulty wiring. And there she was, Jenny, strapped to a chair, bruised, bloodied, but alive. Her eyes, wide with exhaustion yet blazing with defiance, met Leon's as he approached. The world shrank to the span of that gaze. All the fear, all the anger, all the sorrow condensed into a single heartbeat shared between them, his chest constricted, muscles coiling, a storm of rage and relief crashing together in violent collision. Elias stood beside her, older, colder, yet every bit the master manipulator Leon remembered. His hands were clasped behind his back, a slow, deliberate clap breaking the tense silence. "You always thought love made you weak," Elias said, voice carrying effortlessly across the mill, echoing off the rusted steel like a death knell. "Let's see how weak it makes you now." The words were venom, yet calculated, a psychological weapon aimed squarely at Leon's heart. Leon didn't hesitate. He lunged, gun drawn, intent burning in his eyes like molten steel. His rage propelled him forward, muscles straining, footsteps pounding against the concrete. But Elias only laughed, a cold, deliberate sound that reverberated through the empty spaces of the mill. "That boy, your son. He was supposed to die in that crash. Fate intervened," Elias said, voice low, venomous. Leon's world narrowed, vision tunnel-like, everything else fading into irrelevance. Rage, desperation, love, all fused into a singular focus. Get Jenny and Lucas to safety, no matter the cost. Every plan he had honed, every strategy conceived over decades, fell into place like clockwork. He moved, precise, calculated, yet with the raw urgency of a man who had little time to calculate. The shadows shifted as Elias raised a gun, aimed deliberately at Jenny's chest. The world seemed to tilt, slow, then accelerate in heartbeats of terror and adrenaline. Leon's mind raced, scanning angles, trajectories, calculating reactions, instinct merging with instinct, muscle memory battling the emotional chaos inside him. Jack moved too, silent and deliberate, stepping into the path of danger with a controlled urgency. His presence was both reassurance and another variable Leon could not control. The seconds stretched like hours, thick with tension, each breath a countdown to catastrophe. Leon's gaze darted from Elias to Jenny, every fiber of his being screaming to act, to strike, to save, to destroy. The gun in Elias's hand twitched slightly, deliberate yet impatient. He knew they were there, knew the challenge was set. His lips curved into a predatory smile, one that promised both pain and triumph, both for Leon and for those he loved. The mill's walls seemed to close in, echoing with the ghosts of past battles, with the scent of rust, blood, and fear mingling in the air. The floorboards groaned under weight, and somewhere in the darkness rats scattered, a minor tremor, yet enough to heighten every nerve in Leon's body. Then came the sound that shattered the moment. A single gunshot. The echo ricocheted off steel beams and concrete walls, a deafening punctuation to the tension. Leon froze mid-stride, eyes wide, heart pounding like a jackhammer. Jack had pulled the trigger, The timing was perfect, the precision lethal. Elias staggered, the gun slipping from his hand, eyes wide in disbelief as he faltered. Jenny's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and disbelief flashing across her bruised face. Lucas, strapped safely in his carrier nearby, let out a small cry, the sound cutting through the haze of tension like a blade. Leon's heart hammered as adrenaline surged, every nerve firing, every muscle coiling for the final confrontation. The weight of rage, love, and fear pressed down upon him, sharpening his focus to a razor edge. Elias fell, but not fully defeated. His hand twitched, a faint, subtle movement that suggested danger was not yet over. Leon's eyes narrowed, scanning for traps, hidden men, angles of attack. Every instinct screamed that the battle was far from finished, that Elias's reach extended further than a single bullet could pierce. The shadows themselves seemed alive, whispering threats, hinting at betrayal, danger, and deception waiting to strike again. Jack's chest heaved as he steadied himself, blood staining his shirt from a grazing wound that had gone unnoticed in the chaos. His eyes met Leon's, silent acknowledgement passing between them. The trust, the bond forged in battles past, now tempered by fire and survival, held them together even in the maelstrom. Leon nodded, recognizing that the path ahead would be treacherous, fraught with danger beyond imagining. Elias coughed, his lips twisting into a sly, venomous grin as he whispered, barely audible but cutting through the tension like a knife. "You may have won the bullet, but the war has just begun. He knows where she is, and soon, so will you." The words lingered in the air, heavy and ominous. Leon's eyes burned with fury, determination, and a single unyielding purpose: bring Jenny and Lucas home, alive. 7. Time slowed, the world narrowing to a single, impossible instant. The echo of the gunshot reverberated through the derelict textile mill, ricocheting off rusted steel beams and concrete walls. Leon's pulse thundered in his ears, a hurricane of adrenaline and disbelief. For a heartbeat, he expected another betrayal, a trick of fate, some last-minute maneuver from Elias that would undo everything. But no, the threat had ended with precision. The bullet had struck its mark. Elias Romano, the ghost who had haunted him, the man who had manipulated, tortured, and controlled so many lives, crumpled to the ground with a sudden lethal finality. Leon's mind raced, disbelief and relief clashing violently. He looked to Jack, whose breathing was ragged, chest heaving, eyes wide with the effort of holding himself upright. Blood stained the front of his shirt, glistening in the dim, flickering light of the mill. Leon's stomach tightened as he realized the gravity of Jack's sacrifice. This was not just a friend, not just a lieutenant, not just a brother in arms. He had put himself in the line of death to ensure that Leon and Jenny lived. He would have never stopped. Jack gasped, voice trembling with both exertion and pain. A whisper carried over the chaos. "You had to live, boss. She had to live." Time seemed to fracture. The roar of flames consumed the mill, consuming memories, secrets, and lies alike. Smoke swirled thickly, choking the corridors, curling around beams and crates like tendrils of some living entity. Leon bent, arms steady but trembling under the weight of human emotion and flesh, lifting Jack's bloodied body with one arm while cradling Jenny's shaking form with the other. Her eyes, wide and bright despite exhaustion and pain, clung to him as if she would vanish if he faltered for even a second. Every step was measured, every breath deliberate, as the flames hungrily licked at the remnants of the empire Elias had built. The smell of fire and charred wood was suffocating, making Leon's throat tighten with each inhale. Sparks and embers danced through the air, striking the floor and walls, igniting loose debris in small, crackling bursts. The mill groaned under the strain of the inferno, beams bending and snapping, threatening to collapse at any moment. Each second stretched like eternity, the sound of distant explosions punctuating the chaos. Yet Leon's focus never wavered. Every ounce of his being was dedicated to getting Jenny and Jack to safety. He stumbled at one point, a crate giving way beneath his boots, but Jack's hand shot out instinctively, grasping Leon's forearm. Even in the haze of blood loss, even in the shadow of imminent death, Jack's loyalty and strength shone through. Leon pulled them both upright, shaking his head to clear the smoke and fear clouding his vision. He could feel the heat of the flames against his skin, hear the panic in Jenny's frantic breaths, and yet the resolve in his chest was unshakable. Nothing would stop him. Not fire, not bullets, not the ghost of a man who had tried to destroy everything he loved. The fire consumed everything in its path, snapping wooden beams, shattering windows, and igniting piles of abandoned textiles into rolling, infernal waves of orange and red. Leon's boots pounded on the wet concrete as he navigated debris and smoke. The world had become a kaleidoscope of chaos, sparks flying past his face, smoke curling into black, suffocating fingers, the smell of burning flesh and wood thick in the air. Yet even amidst the storm, his eyes never left Jenny. Every step was a promise, every stride a vow. She and Lucas would survive, and Jack's sacrifice would not be in vain. Jenny gasped, clutching at Leon's coat, eyes wide with terror. "Hurry, hurry, Leon!" Her voice cut through the roar of the inferno, piercing him like a spear. The firelight reflected in her eyes, giving them an almost ethereal glow, a mixture of fear and faith. Leon tightened his grip, his mind scanning every exit, every potential obstacle, calculating the risks with surgical precision. The floor beneath them groaned with every step, threatening to collapse, and the walls shuddered as if protesting their intrusion. Jack coughed violently, a dry, raspy sound that made Leon's stomach twist. Blood stained his lips, and yet the man tried to push himself up to steady Leon's grip. Leon's arm tightened, bracing the weight, whispering to him in low, urgent tones, "Stay with me. You saved her. You've got to stay with me." Jack's eyes met his, a mix of pride, sorrow, and relief. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking, "for everything. But at least I saved what mattered to her." His eyes fluttered closed, surrendering to the finality of his wounds. Leon's heart clenched, grief and fury coiling together, burning hotter than the flames around them. Finally, they breached the doorway leading outside. Fresh air hit Leon like a surge of life, a momentary reprieve from the hell they had just endured. The night air smelled of smoke and water from the nearby river, mixing into a scent that was bitter, metallic, and strangely sweet. The smell of survival and sacrifice. He collapsed to his knees momentarily, putting Jack down gently, cradling his head. Jenny's hands flew to his arms, gripping him, shaking him slightly. "Leon, Jack!" she cried. Her voice was a tether, anchoring him to the present, reminding him of why he had fought, why he had risked everything. The fire behind them raged, devouring the mill, each explosion echoing like the heartbeat of vengeance itself. Sparks shot high into the night sky, and embers drifted lazily on the wind, some landing near the riverbank, smoldering harmlessly in the dark. Yet even as the inferno painted the skyline with hellfire, Leon's eyes caught movement. Elias's men had scattered, but not disappeared. Every shadow seemed alive with potential threat, every distant sound a possible ambush. The night was far from over. Leon's gaze fell to the ground near his feet, and he noticed the ledger. It had been half buried under a fallen beam, scorched at the edges but intact. The leather cover was familiar, worn, and heavy. Leon reached for it instinctively, his hand brushing against the charred corners, lifting it carefully, reverently. Jenny's eyes followed him, wide and fearful, yet tinged with curiosity. She had no idea what secrets this book contained, yet the tension radiating from Leon warned her it would change everything. The ledger opened to the first page. revealing meticulously recorded transactions, names and accounts, all the secrets Elias had hoarded, all the power he had wielded from the shadows. Leon's eyes scanned quickly, heart hammering as he realized the scope. And then he froze. One name leapt off the page with an almost physical weight: Leon Devarez. Every execution order, every deal, every crime he had been blamed for, all of it traced back to him. Some were lies forged by Elias, some manipulated to make him appear a monster to the world, to the city, to himself. The revelation was a thunderclap of betrayal and vindication. Jenny gasped beside him. Leon, what? What does it mean? Her voice trembled, the exhaustion and trauma clear in every syllable. Leon looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes like molten metal, a mixture of grief, rage, and revelation. It means, he said slowly, voice low and hoarse, everything they thought I did, everything they used to hate me for, wasn't all mine. His hands clenched the ledger, knuckles white as he flipped through the pages again. Every name, every note was a dagger pointing to Elias, every order a testament to the manipulation that had governed his life. As Leon closed the ledger, a faint sound behind them made him freeze. A shadow moved at the edge of the firelight, someone watching, someone waiting. His instincts screamed danger. He turned slowly, hand on his gun, eyes scanning the darkness. The night was silent, but not empty. Somewhere, hidden in the flame's reflection, a figure waited with intent, and the next move would determine whether his family lived or died. 8. The hospital room was quiet, almost unnervingly so. As Leon sat beside Jenny's bed, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor punctuated the silence like a heartbeat, trying to reclaim normalcy after weeks of chaos. Her hand lay in his, warm and fragile, a tether to the life he had risked everything to protect. The sunlight through the blinds slanted across her face, illuminating the faint bruises that still marked her skin, each one a reminder of the war they had survived. Leon's gaze lingered on her, tracing the lines of exhaustion, relief, and quiet strength that radiated from her even in vulnerability. The ledger lay open on the small table beside them, its leather cover softened by age and handling, its pages a labyrinth of secrets that had once controlled, haunted, and destroyed lives. Each name, each transaction, each recorded order was a testament to the manipulation of Elias Romano, the man who had shaped Leon's life from behind the shadows. Reading through it, Leon felt the heavy burden of a lifetime lifted and replaced with a sharp, almost painful clarity. The crimes that had made him the devil, the city's nightmare, were not all his. Some were forged, manipulated, orchestrated by Elias to create a legend of fear and brutality that Leon had only partially lived. He traced a finger across the pages, stopping at the names that had cost lives, names he had once believed he carried responsibility for. Each one burned him anew, yet now knowledge tempered the guilt with justice. Leon realized that the chains he had borne for years were built on lies, yet the weight of those years had also forged a man capable of love, sacrifice, and redemption. He looked at Jenny and the memory of every stolen night. Every agonized moment apart, every misstep he had made to protect her flooded back. His chest tightened, and a single unsteady breath escaped him. Jenny stirred, blinking through fatigue, her eyes finding his. Tears shimmered, glinting like tiny crystals in the sunlight, reflecting the depth of everything they had endured. "You left to protect me," she whispered, voice trembling yet strong, carrying both accusation and understanding. "But all I wanted was for you to fight with me." Her words struck a chord deep within Leon, reverberating through every nerve, every scarred memory, every fragment of love he had tried to bury. He felt the truth of her pain, the agony of the years lost, and the weight of his own cowardice. "I was a coward, Jenny," he admitted, voice low, breaking raw with the honesty he had denied himself for so long. "But I'm done running." The words hung between them like a vow, heavy and solemn, a promise that no one, not fate, not Elias, not circumstance, could undo. He squeezed her hand gently, drawing strength from the warmth of her touch, the simple affirmation that they were alive, that Lucas was safe, and that they could finally rebuild what had been stolen from them. Outside the hospital, the remnants of Leon's empire smoldered in the shadows of the city. Police cars and news vans swarmed the buildings, cameras flashing, reporters murmuring, and authorities piecing together the chaos that had unfolded. But Leon's gaze was elsewhere. The chaos outside, the judgment of the world, the whispers that had once painted him as a monster, none of it mattered. He had already faced judgment in the fires of his own conscience. And now, for the first time, he felt unshackled. With deliberate purpose, he signed papers transferring every asset, every building, every ounce of power he had once wielded into the hands of a charity in Jenny's name. It was a symbolic act, a cleansing of the sins that had been falsely attributed to him, a final severing of ties to a life built on fear, violence, and control. Each stroke of the pen felt like a release, a step toward humanity he had long denied himself. When the last signature was placed, he leaned back in the chair for a moment, letting the weight of relief wash over him, tempered by the lingering ache of past losses. Days passed slowly, each one a careful reconstruction of normalcy. Leon found solace in quiet moments, the faint rustle of hospital sheets, the gentle cadence of Jenny's breathing, the small miraculous sounds of Lucas discovering the world for the first time. Each laugh, each cry, each tentative step forward reminded him of what truly mattered: life, family, love, untainted by manipulation and violence. He watched Jenny recover, strength slowly returning to her limbs, confidence to her steps, and gratitude in her eyes that spoke without words. Finally, the day came when Leon could leave the hospital. He cradled Lucas in his arms, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his chest, the warmth of life he had almost lost. Jenny walked beside him, eyes soft, a mixture of pride, relief, and the unspoken bond that only those who have faced death together can truly understand. They stepped out into the sunlight, the city around them buzzing with indifference, unaware that in its midst, a man who had once been called the devil was reclaiming his soul. The world had called Leon a monster, a tyrant, a ruthless king whose name inspired fear. And yet, in that quiet park later that day, holding his son in the dappled sunlight, watching Jenny's tears of relief and joy glisten like morning dew, he finally understood the truth. Humanity had always been there, buried beneath the layers of fear, rage, and survival. It had been waiting for a moment like this, a moment of simple, profound love. Leon let the gentle breeze brush against his face as he lifted Lucas higher, feeling the child's small hands curl around his fingers. Laughter erupted spontaneously, pure and untamed, and Leon felt it vibrate through his chest, shaking loose the remnants of guilt and fear. Jenny watched from a distance, smiling through tears, knowing without words that this man, once a symbol of darkness, was finally whole. The ledger, now secured safely away, remained a reminder of the past, a testament to manipulation, betrayal, and survival. But it no longer dictated his actions, nor did it haunt his conscience. Every page he had read, every truth uncovered had paved the way for this moment: redemption, love, and the fragile, delicate beauty of life reclaimed. Leon's gaze fell on the horizon, sunlight catching the edge of the river nearby, sparkling like molten gold. The city that had once trembled under his name now seemed distant, irrelevant. He was no longer bound by fear, power, or legend. He was a father. He was a man who had fought through darkness, who had endured fire, blood, and betrayal, and who had emerged not unscathed, but human. He knelt beside a small bench in the park, placing Lucas gently on it before himself, allowing the boy to crawl, laugh, and explore under the warm sun. Jenny settled beside them, brushing Lucas's hair from his eyes, and Leon felt a peace that was both unfamiliar and intoxicating. It was a peace, hard-earned, fought for in shadows and fire, but unassailable now. As the day stretched lazily into afternoon, Leon finally allowed himself to breathe, to let go, to acknowledge the scars that remained, not with shame, but with quiet reverence for the battles survived. He reached for Jenny's hand, and she intertwined her fingers with his, a connection forged in love, pain, and endurance. No words were necessary. The bond they shared, tested and tempered through years of fire, needed no explanation. And then, holding Lucas once more, Leon looked at the boy's face, soft and trusting, and realized that this was why he had survived, why he had endured, why he had fought. To be present in these moments, to witness life untainted by the horrors of the past. Every heartbeat of the child was a victory, every smile a testament to hope, and every tear wiped away a promise of protection. The city would continue to judge him. The world would continue to whisper rumors and tales of a monster, but Leon no longer sought approval. He had found his humanity in the laughter of his son, the warmth of Jenny's hand, and the quiet, profound peace of being a man capable of love. Sometimes love doesn't save you. It doesn't prevent the fires, the betrayals, or the scars. But it breaks you just enough, shatters the walls around your soul, and leaves you raw, exposed, and alive. And in that rawness, in that exposure, Leon finally discovered what it truly meant to be whole. The sunlight spilled over the park, glinting on the gentle waves of the nearby fountain, casting golden patterns over father and child. Jenny's smile, radiant and tear-streaked, reflected in Leon's eyes, and he knew, without doubt, that this life, imperfect, fragile, and painfully earned, was worth every battle, every betrayal, every ounce of blood spilled. Leon lifted Lucas again, spinning him slightly as the boy squealed in delight, and Jenny laughed alongside them, a sound that felt like absolution. The ledger, the empire, the shadows of the past, all could burn. Here, in the sunlight, with life restored and love reclaimed, Leon finally felt the true measure of victory. He whispered softly, almost to himself, almost to the wind, "We are alive, and we will live together." If you felt every heartbeat, every betrayal, and every moment of love in this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Heartwoven Tales. Share this tale of revenge, redemption, and love with someone who loves intense, real-life drama. The story may end here, but the legacy lives on.